Ladies and gentlemen, everyone around and in between, this is DebateSensei, NFA LD edition. This is where we talk about things that are relevant to competitive debate in the National Forensics Association Lincoln Douglas division. With me is Dr. Justin Kirk from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. Thank you very much, Dr. Kirk. I love that. And from the Western Kentucky University, we got Chad Meadows as always.
Hey everybody, how you doing?
All right, thank you both for being here. And the last time we talked, we were covering Western Kentucky. And I was kind of reviewing what we talked about, and I was reviewing the results because I kind of, I'm trying to juggle all of these things, and I see a lot of similarities between this tournament and the previous one. But I want to get right into some of maybe some of the differences. Where we started last time, we talked about was, all right, so what was the most popular affirmative? And it was no first use. My question, are people sticking with it, or are they trying to be a little bit more unpredictable? Are they switching up for, even though it might not be the strongest case?
I think people are generally sticking with it for the most part. Like I think that the evidence is so good on both sides of that debate that like it is not only a good AF to run, but it's a good AF to debate against, because the negative arguments are quite good as well. And as you dig deeper into the literature, the cards just get better on both sides. And so I think it's one of those debates that will get deeper as the year goes on, but not necessarily shift a ton. One thing you're seeing is the team starting to kind of narrow what the no first use is applied to. I've seen a couple of people reading one specifically to China, one specifically to other countries, but not really changing kind of the mechanism by which they do it. I don't know, Chad, you might have seen something different. You were judging a lot more at the tournament than I was.
No, I would definitely say that NFU is still the most popular affirmative out there. I would say there's more of a strong two now, though. Like, I think ICBMs is like kind of firmly the second most popular affirmative, which I think is what we kind of predicted actually when we were talking about which AFs we thought would be the most popular. There's definitely a lot of teams also that are eliminating the ICBM's leg from the nuclear triad. And so, I would say like NFU still one, but a burgeoning two of ICBMs.
So we didn't cover ICBMs last time. How is that, like, the plan text shaped on that? How does it logistically work out? Would you explain the story to somebody?
Yeah. Do y'all have an ICBMs AF?
We do. Actually, let me pull up Connor's AF real quick, and I'll just read you the plan. We've got one in the hopper right now. But I think the premise of the ICBMs AF is generally that they are kind of a redundant part of our nuclear triad. They're built in the 50s and 60s. Their primary use is as a kind of sponge nowadays for nuclear attacks from adversaries. So if Russia decides to attack us, most of our ICBMs are located in rural areas. That's where Russia would strike. So we have kind of a plan to use them as a way of like soaking up damage during a nuclear war, which isn't really the best use of them. If we could get rid of them, it might provide some benefits like avoiding things like hair trigger alert, which a lot of them are on, or the launch on warning status that a lot of these missiles remain in. So Connor's plan text says the U.S. federal government should substantially reduce the role and number of its nuclear weapons by retiring its ICBM force and ending launch on warning. Now, there's some debate of whether or not the ending launch on warning part falls under role, and that's a debate that I think we've had a few times. That our argument kind of is that launch on warning is part of the weapon's role to be launched in the event of an attack. Russia launches, we immediately launch all of our ICBMs in a response before those missiles hit. And so our argument in those debates is that the launch on warning status is part of the weapon's role in deterrence. And then a lot of it is about miscalculation and hair trigger alert, and why we've had so many close calls over the years with ICBMs, but never actually had an accidental launch. And probably should avoid the risk.
Okay. So what's the main neg against that? Like, because I immediately think about, retiring, what does that mean? That's where my research is going to be directed in order to really develop a neg on that. But is there something I'm missing?
I mean, I think you can also just like negate the thesis of the affirmative.
Right.
So I mean, there are definitely. So I think there's like probably more people in the nuclear weapons scholarship that are arguing that ICBMs are redundant, not super necessary. I think there's like a pretty. I would say like if it was like a split, it would be like at least 60-40. But the 40%, right? Some persuasive cards that ICBMs are important to nuclear deterrence, and that the fears that they would result in miscalculations are somewhat overblown. The reason why ICBMs are important for deterrence, as per the people who love ICBMs, is that there are so many of them. So we've got like 400 or so, I think, maybe 300 or so, that are like scattered across, the Midwest, and in an event of a nuclear first strike by an adversary, the idea is that because there are so many ICBMs there and a bunch of different silos, and we have some form of ballistic missile defense, that they sort of constitute an ever-present second strike capability that deters adversaries from attempting any nuclear action against the United States. So I think some people lean into the sponge concept, if you will.
Right.
Like, yeah, we need a sponge, basically, is I think what they're arguing. Because in terms of like number, we have relatively fewer nuclear weapons in the other legs. Right? Like, we don't have nearly as many bombers. We don't have nearly as many nuclear submarines, because those are what I would call much more survivable. Right, so like it'd be a lot harder for like an adversary to like figure out where a nuclear submarine was and attempt to use either conventional or nuclear force to like eliminate that. Same with with bombers. The other thing, kind of leaning into the sponge concept, is if one of the fears with nuclear deterrence from the U.S. perspective is that we live in a democracy, kind of, and the U.S. public has somewhat soured on getting involved in the issues of other countries, especially nuclear countries. Forcing countries to attack the United States homeland guarantees public support for second strike, which is kind of a morbid thought.
Yeah.
I have read multiple times by military strategists that almost like dangling that as the primary second strike capability guarantees that if we are to be struck, the authority and public support for absolute chaos is guaranteed, because it doesn't mean that an adversary is striking like a ship in the middle of the Baltic Sea. It means that they like just nuked Wyoming.
Right. As you were explaining that, some of the current events that are happening starts popping to mind. I'm wondering if the instability between Israel and Gaza right now played any role in the strategies you saw at this tournament.
Not a ton. I don't know.
The finals that I could think of.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
In the finals, North Texas did break and Israel decide.
Oh, okay. Got it. You expect to see more of that maybe at next upcoming tournaments?
Yes.
Yeah, I think teams will find some ways. I think it can be challenging though, because it's like, okay, so like America definitely is like a backer of Israel, but I don't know that we're a backer with we don't have like an extended deterrence guarantee with Israel. Like there's no like nuclear umbrella. Ostensibly, Israel is a nuclear weapon state.
Yeah.
I
mean, I think everyone knows it, but they still don't admit it. It's a weird ass policy.
Well, I think the disconnect on the topic too is that a lot of the deterrence that we do against adversaries in the Middle East is conventional deterrence. We do not deter in the Middle East with nuclear weapons. That is great power deterrence in rogue states, maybe a little bit of Iran, but whatever's going on there right now has more to do with U.S. Aircraft carriers and special forces and drones in the region, and U.S. footprints in places like Syria and Iraq, than necessarily U.S. nuclear weapons posture. So the like tie to the topic is pretty tenuous. And I think finding arguments that link the two together is going to be difficult early on in the conflict. As this goes deeper or longer or more complexifies, right? Like, I think more people will start analyzing how it ties to those things.
Right.
But so early in the conflict, I think people are just kind of trying to figure out what does this look like if it does kind of begin to unravel.
Okay. Any out of the box things? Anyone break anything new and creative that caught your ear, made waves, anything like that?
Yeah, no, Texas broke a psychoanalysis critique.
Okay.
On the affirmative. So I think that they kind of like wanted to explore some of the attachments that both international relations scholarships and debate have with envisioning the end of the world, and why that might be, and why debate on the topic might kind of play into some of those discussions. And they read an affirmative that was about kind of exploring those tropes and attachments to discussions of chaos and doom and gloom that debate seems to be pretty attached to.
Yeah, I was talking with the CETA coach from Long Beach, and we were talking about authors, and some of the publications that he was showing me were about like the fixation with the bomb, the fetishizing of the bomb, and things like that. Is that what was?
Yeah,
that was mentioned. Oh wow.
Yeah,
So
I'm pretty sure they're reading the Matheson stuff, right, Chad?
Yeah, the top card in the AC is from I believe Dr. Matheson's at Pitt, maybe, or at least was at Pitt, and they were a very successful CETA NDT debater from Michigan State University as well. It was actually, I feel like what turned me on to debate was watching Caleb Matheson negate in like a 2001 CETA final.
Right. Caleb Lister Matheson. That's exactly who it was.
Yep.
There's a few others like Vincent Intondi, I believe. Is another author. Okay. We're definitely going to have an episode about authors because I want to see what the similarities or differences are. Anyways, let's kind of transition a little bit and talk a bit more about the specific results. Can you tell me how to pronounce that? the title of the tournament? I'm looking it up on
DiMuggio.
DiMuggio.
That is news to me. I had no idea how to pronounce it.
I think like all other debate tournaments, it is named after someone who debated or was a coach at UNT at some point. It was the DiMuggio back when I was debating, and UNT hosted half of the Texas swing in the wintertime.
Okay.
It used to be the second half of a UT Dallas North Texas swing on the CETA circuit.
DiMuggio. Interesting.
DiMuggio.
All right. And what's the significance of this tournament in terms of the overall season?
I would say this tournament had probably as good of competition, if not better than the Western Kentucky tournament.
Okay.
And it's kind of if you added the two debaters that I have that couldn't compete because they were busy that weekend, I think this is most representative of how Nationals is going to look.
Got it.
Washburn was here this weekend. Their top debaters were, it looks like Cade and Andrew both made it to elims. So I think the way that this kind of bracket shaped out is going to be very similar to what you're going to see in Octos at Nationals this year.
Yeah, I mean, there's twice as many, like the entries, about twice as large as Western Kentucky was. Just foreshadowing, do you know what the entry is like at Nationals, like the overall size?
We can count bids of teams of like who's got bids from what schools, but like I think you don't really know until everybody kind of crunches the numbers and then gets the hotel rooms in February. All right, let's talk. We had about 110, I think.
Oh, wow.
So that, really? I mean, it kind of fluctuates between about 95 and about 150 from year to year, depending on the size of, schools and programs and stuff like that. We got a lot of new programs this year, so I think it's probably going to be a bit bigger.
All right. Let's talk about the breaks. The people who broke in, you're saying that basically this is who we're probably going to see in nationals as well. Is there any teams that couldn't make it that you're like, oh well, let's not forget about them?
I'm trying to think of who all was on the entries list that I was surprised wasn't going to be there.
Because I'm looking, like you were talking last time, Appalachian State. Were they there? Yeah.
No, they weren't.
Yeah.
And Marshall's got a couple of debaters that weren't there. The biggest kind of standout that wasn't there would be probably Lewis and Clark from the West Coast, or Sacramento State from the West Coast. Mm-hmm. This tournament didn't have a whole lot of West Coast representation. There's a few pretty big schools. I mean, Fullerton College was at UNT, and they're a pretty new program that's been showing up at a lot of tournaments. So,
okay, Fullerton College, yeah, I know. I think that's who's that there?
Tony Nielsen.
Tony Nielsen. That's exactly who I was thinking. That's right. All right, and they're coming into NFA LD. They're using their policy skills for that. Very nice. Yep. Excellent. All right, so the breaks. We're having a lot of similar breaks here. We have, who's the big winner? Looks like Truman.
Truman got 1, 2, 3 out.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the overall number. Oh no, but Washburn and Truman each got 3 out, right?
Yep, and then North Texas got 3 as well.
Oh, I didn't. Okay, I miscounted on that one. Wow, yep. Man, that is filled out. And then we had
11 total, 2 from Western Kentucky, and then 3 from each of the others. Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Okay, and so what did it just take a straight 4-2 to break? Do you know?
Yes.
Okay, and so they got everyone with a 4-2.
Mm-hmm.
All right, excellent. And then let's talk about this. There was a weird setup in order to hit these octafinals where 5 teams bide through the octafinals.
Mm-hmm. Yep, right. The top 5 seeds got buys, and then the next 6 debaters debated each other.
Okay.
In a partial octos, and let's see, Washburn, Andrew Rea defeated one of Truman's younger debaters.
Mm-hmm.
And then Cade Blendon defeated Nick, right?
Yeah.
And then North Texas's Joe Wofford advanced over a Washburn debater as well to set up the quarterfinals.
All right. 1, 2, 3, and then that puts it up to 8. Very nice. All right, so I'm going to go to open quarters here, and now we got. But so what happens in quarters here? Oh, they're hitting each other, and so North Texas has to. Oh, all right. So tell us about when this happens in tournaments. Y'all don't break brackets that way?
No, we don't typically break brackets. Typically, it's coaches or team's decision. Sometimes the tournaments will auto-advance the higher seed, but typically they ask the coach who they want to advance. Our policy, usually most teams' policy is like the higher seed goes unless something else comes up. So what you'll notice is that the higher seed in this round actually was Alicia Stout from Truman State.
Mm-hmm.
But she competed with bronchitis all weekend.
Oh.
And so when it came to the time to have a walkover, that's like the few times you'll see an exception is like illness or seniority or stuff like that.
Okay. But the other one, it was just seeding, huh?
Yeah, the other one was North Texas's top seed advanced. Yeah.
All right, and then Chad, you got somebody in quarters debating against Washburn. Tell me about how that round went. I'm assuming that you probably got the full story.
Yeah. Okay. So in that debate, we read NFU.
Okay. Yeah.
And I believe Washburn went for topicality on the word roll against the NFU AF. Yeah. There's like, I don't know. There's definitely a decent chunk of people that think that NFU is like only debatably topical, maybe not topical. Because it doesn't. So the idea is that so there's like 3 roles defined in the nuclear posture review. The one that's the most relevant, the biggest one, is that nuclear weapons are to deter nuclear attacks. against the U.S. or allies. And the idea is that, like, okay, so if all you do is sort of like impose a no first use policy, the role of nuclear weapons to deter attacks has not fundamentally changed. Thus, you haven't reduced the role of nuclear weapons. Is kind of like the argument.
Okay.
There's a healthy chunk of both judges and teams that are reading and winning on this argument quite a bit.
Okay. That was my next question.
Yeah. I mean, we've had to write new answers to this basically every tournament because people have gotten better and better at making this argument at tournaments.
Okay, so that is one difference in, like, even though it's still maintaining its popularity, these are some strategies that you've had to adapt to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
And there's some judges who've made it pretty explicitly clear that this is how they feel about this affirmative, and like kind of working around a judge who's like in their decision, like, I just don't think NFU is a topical AF. And you're like, okay, so how do we deal with this moving forward? How do we like overcome somebody who's kind of declared what side of the debate they're on? I mean, and they're not a judge that I wouldn't think we couldn't convince if we won the debate, but there's definitely judges who have been like, this is absolutely not a topical AF.
Do they put it in their paradigms on
No, you usually hear it in decisions or read it in ballots.
Okay, and then that spreads like wildfire. Okay, or at least within teams, that's for sure. But that's when you bust out the ICBM case, right?
Or subs or bombers.
Yeah.
I do not plan on busting out the ICBM's case, and if he was topical,
Chad and I are on the same side on this one. We're going to keep reading NFU till the end of the year.
Yeah. Okay. Personally, I'm not like super worried about the NFU royalty, but I will definitely concede some teams have found some pretty reasonable evidence and arguments to support their position.
Mm-hmm.
To give a shout out, I actually think so. We went to a regional tournament, the Marshall University tournament in West Virginia, and we hit Central Michigan University.
Yep.
I think they had the best version of this team by far.
Oh, really?
From like a JV debater, Yina Todd. I thought her version was honestly better than every varsity Elam version that I saw, because she had a card from the book Sheathed Sword that literally directly says NFU does not reduce the number or role of nuclear weapons.
Oh,
yeah, it's a pretty explicit T card. I read the same card because we ran into it. The Sheathed Sword is now sitting in my ILL inbox at the university. It's a book that was published in India, so it's pretty hard to get, and I'm not dropping $100 on it.
I think the Sheathed Sword might be on LibGen.
Really?
Maybe not.
Yeah, well, but no, that card was so good, I immediately went and found the book because I was like, this is like the best piece of evidence that connects the two together. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, immediately went into our files. Thank you, CMI.
Yep. All right. Well, I love learning a little bit about those little stories about how you come across certain types of evidence, how books end up on your shelf. That's always fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because it is a fairly obscure book that you wouldn't find in any other context. And so that's awesome. But it doesn't seem like that topicality worked in this round.
Not in this round, though. I mean, it was a 2-1.
Okay. Well, there you go.
I remember the judge who voted against us being a decent judge too. So like, it wasn't like it was like a judge. It was
Brian Bloss.
DA, or was it? No, that was semis. Zach Thornhill voted against us in the.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay.
I heard there was good debate. I think, like, from what I understand, it kind of just came down to how convincing the judges found reasonability. And the judges that voted AF were convinced. The judges that voted NEG were not convinced.
Does the fact that so many people think that it is topical, like, feed into the reasonability argument?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah?
I mean, and, the coaching advice that I was giving after the debate that I would give to any student who was, reading an FU is that you don't need to make reasonability a defensive position. It's an offensive position. Right. So, like, if the consensus of the literature is that when we're talking about the role of nuclear weapons, NFU is included in that discussion, then the negatives limit they try to create on the topic is one that's unpredictable.
Right.
And you need to leverage unpredictability and like the precision of the literature in a way that is offensive and not just like a, come on, everyone reads NFU. Please don't vote against me.
All right. What do we know about the other?
I judged that debate. That was
I see that. Yeah,
that was a good round. Okay, so that was a critique debate. Washburn had a critique of militarism. I thought it was profoundly close. I have a thing I do when a debate's close. Maybe in like 15% of debates, if I'm having difficulty deciding, I will write both RFDs and basically decide between the two RFDs, like which one is less intervention, makes more sense, accounts for most of the arguments in the debate.
Yeah.
That was a debate where I wrote both RFDs.
Wow.
And functionally, I think that the negatives quality of argument was just as good. I think the AF, as we pointed out, Zach Jones from UNT did better ballot instruction, did a better job of framing the debate for the judges, which I think Zach is really good about. And so that's why I voted AF. But I totally got the neg vote too, honestly.
Oh man, learning how to the real purpose of rebuttals was a lesson I learned really late in my debate career. You know what I mean? It's like it was always about the case construction and then the sort of mid-game strategy. And then it's like the assumption is like, and then you win, but it's not. You have to put it. You still have to put that into words. You still have to explain it to somebody who might not see it the same way.
And I would say Zach is one of the best at finishing a debate that I have seen in a long time in this activity. He knows how to give a judge a path through a very complicated and messy debate. And just has a way of doing it that I think most judges really I think understand and can kind of comprehend and put the pieces together. Sometimes you'll think Zach is losing a debate and then you'll turn around and look at your flow and no, he's clearly won this debate.
Yeah.
Perceptually, he may not feel like he's winning the debate, but he is exceedingly intelligent and strategic in the way he approaches rebuttals.
All right. Well, that set up North Texas and Western Kentucky against the Washburn teams. Right. And so in semis.
No. I think it was Truman.
Oh, wait. I'm still on quarters. I'm bad. Yep. I'm bad. So North Texas is going against Truman versus Wiki. I see it. Yeah. Okay. Oh, wow. North Texas. Congrats. Look at that. Getting all the way like threatening the closeout, but does not look like they did it.
And John Sims making semis is that's a pretty big step up for him. He was a debater who was always very strong, but didn't seem to have the next kind of step to get through the first level out rounds, get to quarters and semis. And this year, just kind of has turned it up a little bit. Did a little bit of practice over the summer, did some redos, came back sounding a lot better as a year older and a year wiser. And so this semis appearance kind of surprised me, but when you see them debate, it's not that surprising now.
Right.
Yeah, totally agree with that.
Cool. It seemed like he got sort of graced with a little happenstance about getting a couple buys. I actually have done that before, and I love it so much. So I'm identifying with him right now. It's so great. So what happens in these two? We got North Texas versus Truman. Looks like they're locked. UNT's locked AF, yeah?
Yeah, North Texas ran NFU, and Truman went for a conventional shift DA. I don't know if we talked about conventional shift on the pod.
No, you know what? I did talk about it on the CETA program, but yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So it's just the idea that if we rely less on nuclear weapons, we will increase our use of conventional weapons, which could be even more escalatory, especially considering conventional weapons don't come with the nuclear taboo attached, meaning their use may be more likely. And, there's some, I don't know, scary, gross weapons that are in the pipe that may be more prevalent and used with greater frequency and virulence if we do not have nuclear weapons anymore.
And so and then you just kind of outweigh on magnitude, basically. But it's also it's a good
link into their
probability.
impacts, and you're like, you know, hypersonics or AI equipped missiles, etc., causes whatever impact you're trying to solve in a worse way than whatever it is that you're trying to use nuclear weapons to F.
So it looks like that did not work.
No, it didn't work, but it was good. It was a good day.
It didn't. Okay. All right. The other one is North Texas and Western Kentucky.
So
congrats. Yeah.
Thank you. Are you talking about finals or semis?
Semis. So this is
Yeah. We so in that debate we ran the asteroids pick in that debate. We had not. I don't think we'd run that yet. We're kind of at the point now where I don't know that we'll run the same NC v NFU ever again. Like I think we're just gonna it up every time. That debate we were like, no first use of nuclear weapons except to prevent an asteroid from striking the Earth.
Man, we talked about this. We talked about this before. And and that's...
if they had watched the pod, they would have had more answers.
Yeah. And so oh man, I love that one. It's just, I don't know, it makes debate seem kind of fun to me, because you start getting like science fiction-y about it and sort of futuristic about it. It's I don't know, that's fun sometimes. It's fun sometimes. And so that worked.
It did work.
All right. And then that means
to the semis.
Yeah. And so that means we have a replay of Western Kentucky, right? Was it the same sites?
I want to say no. I think we were.
You were AF in the finals round, yeah.
Oh.
Well, were we AF at WKU as well?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't think so. Let me
man.
Here. No, we were neg.
Okay.
We were neg at WKU.
Okay.
No, the debate was like we were actually laughing at it. So basically the tournament was the exact same. Zach Jones went 6-0, was the top seed. Ray went 5-1, was the second seed and top speaker. They met in finals, and it's just a difference of one ballot was the difference in the tournament. Yeah.
Oh yeah. All right. So how'd this go?
It was good. Yeah. Theme, we were at NFU. And they did bring some new stuff. So they read, your typical like allied assurance argument. They read, the basic like NFU stuff against case, but they did break an Israel disad. And basically they were like, so we ran like a different advantage in this tournament. We ran like a Russia-China alliance advantage. And basically the argument is that in the status quo, Russia and China are getting closer, and that relationship will culminate in Russia giving China a bunch of like weapons-grade plutonium that will let China have 14,000 nukes. And we can prevent that by doing what's called a wedging strategy and doing an NFU with China to isolate them from Russia, who has a first-use policy and is frankly frequently threatening to first-use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. And that wedging strategy would prevent the plutonium deal, and that would prevent Chinese nuclear modernization. Kind of a twist, a derivative on like what we were running at WKU, but just like a little something different. And they read an Israel DA that was like arms control negotiations would make Israel feel like we weren't their buddies as much anymore.
Right.
And they would feel isolated. They would feel the need to reveal that they have nuclear weapons to like increase their deterrence in the Middle East. And then that would kind of set off the Middle East. There'd be war, bombs, etc. And I believe they went for the Israel DA in the.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right. How did it end? Because that's not on the result, or at least not on this page.
We won. We won the debate.
Oh yeah. Okay. So the it's 1-for-1 now, huh?
Yeah, 1-1. Yeah.
And I honestly think that we're going to see a lot of this as the year goes on. Like I have a feeling
really?
The Gorlock finals is going to be very similar, if not identical. So.
Okay. Well, we'll see then. Like, because when is the Gorlock?
It's end of January. It's usually the last weekend of January. I think that's the next time all of the major programs are going to probably get together for a tournament. So
okay, we'll you know what, we'll make sure that we kick off the season 2 of this with a Orlac recap, I think.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. Hey, thank you all so much for giving me a little bit of insight about what's happening in the background of these tournaments. I really enjoy learning sort of like the similarities and differences. Thank you, Dr. Kirk and Chad Meadows.
Absolutely. Have a good one.